Welcome to another episode of Grind My Gears. I am Ashton Amdari. Thank you for joining me today. Today I got Coach PK Mills of Team Strong Athlete. But before we get to him, head over to AshtonAmdariMMA.com. Look at that. We got the muscle tees in. They look fine. I guarantee you will be 3 shades sexier if you buy one. If you discount code Brown Privilege, 10% off. And when I say 3 shades sexier, people go to the beach just to get this color. So people have been complimenting me on how good my biceps look in that shirt, and we don't even train biceps, coach. So that's how sexy you look if you buy that shirt. So head on over to AshtonAmdariMMA.com and get yourself one discount code Brown Privilege. Also, like this podcast and subscribe. Don't be one of those people who keep telling me, "Oh, I love what you're doing." Subscribe. Don't be a bum. Got. And here we go. Now we're at PK Mills, Coach PK. I've known him for forever. We're like family now.
Yeah.
He's been working with me throughout my amateur professional career, and one of the, if not in my opinion, the top strength coaches in the GTA, in the city, in the province. Not only that, your accolades go beyond coaching. Powerlifting champ in Canada. Welcome, Coach. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me, brother. I'm doing fine. Doing great. How are you?
I'm okay. Doing well during this time. You know, we've talked about that before, how
Yeah.
things have picked up, and I'm quite happy with how life is going, even though the world is a little bit of a shitstorm right now.
A little crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
So before we get started, I just wanted to let people know more about Strong Athlete, like what you guys do and how great you guys are have been doing since. Like I know that the pandemic has hit fitness hard. So how has business been in terms of just keeping up and staying afloat?
Yeah. I mean, the fitness industry was hit pretty hard from, uh, the effects of COVID and the lockdowns and the restrictions. And, it was really challenging the past year and a half. Now, we've been blessed. We've been really, really grateful where we are. We've partnered with a rehab clinic called the Movement Lab, and the guys and gals there, they're like family to us, and they're also essential services, right? So we benefited from the fact that they were essential services, and we're able to operate with a combination of online work and some in-person stuff one on one. And so we're really grateful for that. Really lucky that way.
It's a blessing because not a lot of people had that during this time. Even they would try to find ways around it, and
right.
I mean, you could take the fines, but it's not something you want to deal with while having a business that's not doing so well. Like
there's another stressor that you don't want to add. Right?
I mean, like 90% of those tickets will get thrown out anyway, but it's not something that a lot of people wanted to take on top of the financial
everything else
that they faced. Now, forget all that crap. I don't want to talk to you about that because you have more knowledge than all that. That stuff's irrelevant to how blessed we are to talk to you today. The one thing I wanted to start off with is, long ago when I was an amateur athlete, I came to you and I showed you we watched like countdown shows and stuff like that of the UFC, and even other athletes, and you see all these crazy shit they're doing, battle ropes, sleds, all this extreme awesome stuff, and I'm like, yeah, coach, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this, and you sat me down, you're like, Ashton, if you want to be a great athlete, you have to do 3 things really well. You have to squat, you have to press, and you have to deadlift. If you can't do any of those things, all that other shit that you want to do is completely out of the picture. Do you still hold that philosophy today in terms of your training style, even though like strength training and everything is so dynamic in terms of this evolution? Every 4 or 5 years, new techniques come out. Do you still hold that same belief in terms of training?
No, that's a great question, and I should put some context around that. I strongly believe that those movement patterns the movement pattern of a squat or a press or a pull for, which is very, you could call that a deadlift, a pull. I strongly believe being proficient at those movement patterns will make you a better athlete.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean everybody should be powerlifting or that powerlifting will make you a better athlete. As a matter of fact, most people should not be doing that.
Yes.
But most athletes should be very proficient at the different variations of a squat and the different tools that you would use to do that squat. So that includes your body weight, that includes a barbell, that includes a dumbbell, a kettlebell, a sandbag, a machine in certain situations.
Yeah.
Right. If you're proficient at single leg and double leg, I should also add, and you should be proficient at those movement patterns at different speeds. So for an athlete, and in most sports, speed is a prerequisite. Speed is extremely important.
Speed, explosiveness.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so being able to express strength quickly through a jump squat or a power clean or a push press will have transfer to an athlete in most sports.
Yes.
Now, so that's at fast speeds. The athlete should also be very proficient at those movements at slower speeds. So why is that important? That's showing that the athlete has the stability and the control to move a heavy load across a range of motion safely and can express that strength with control. So I think the movement patterns are more important than the actual type of squat that someone is doing.
Yeah.
But I think, or type of press or type of pull. But I do maintain that those movements are fundamental and should be like the basis of an athletic training program. Now, that doesn't mean that that's the only thing you do, but that's like, the meat and potatoes.
Yes. Now, do you think that also too that those movements, in my opinion, those movements are fundamental for injury prevention as well?
Yes, exactly. So that aligns with being able to move proficiently at high speeds and at slow speeds. And to have that control and stability, that's going to provide resilience to that athlete. That's going to bulletproof that athlete. That's going to make that athlete less injury prone.
Yeah. And I think one of the bigger takeaways from my career so far is that if you remember when I tore my ACL, and I was doing that rehab, we very quickly found out I didn't really know how to squat before. And it was because I had very weak glutes. They weren't active. And we only found that out because I went through the surgery. And part of the rehab was, you got to do glute raise. And I'm struggling doing single leg glute raises and hamstring and all these things in the posterior chain. Now, do you find that, like deadlifts and squats really strengthen that posterior chain? Do you think that that's a biggest weakness in terms of most athletes that walk through your door and that compete in general?
Yeah. In your particular case, you had these tremendous quads, super strong quads, and you still do. And that created at the time a bit of an imbalance between your anterior chain and your posterior chain. And so the injury in hindsight was actually a blessing because it made apparent that we need to really focus on the posterior chain. Now, with the athletes that come in, we get a range of situations, right? You get people who are more dominant in their posterior chain and they need to strengthen their quads.
Yeah.
And if they fail to do that, they're looking at potential knee injury as well, right? So across the board, you're going to get different situations, but more often than not, you'll get people who are stronger in the front than they are in the back.
Yeah.
Basically, their anterior chain is stronger or more dominant than their posterior chain.
Would you say that's genetic, or is it just from everyday life of most people sit, right?
That's a great question. I think it's a combination. I think you're going to have genetic variances, but you're also going to have lifestyle. And I've said this to coaches and in conversation. The vast majority of us, including the athletic population, is a sedentary population.
Yeah, 100%. Like where I'm sitting right now, right?
We sit most of the time. Even high level athletes who may train an hour or two a day, the rest of the time, most of those people are sitting, right?
Yeah.
And that creates a whole host of issues and leads to dysfunction, including, as you said, weak glutes or glutes that are not turned on, not activated, issues with the core, issues with posture, right? So sitting has caused a lot of issues for the modern population.
One of the first, like a lot of people, especially like non-athletes that I work with, and I'm sure with you, one of the common things that they tell me is they always have lower back pain. And
Right.
before I even go into the meat and potato lifts, like those deadlifts and the squats, I tend to address stretching of the hamstrings and glute strengthening first, and it seems to resolve those issues before, like within a week or two. Just
Right.
starting that with somebody over, hey, yeah, just squat. You know what I mean? I feel like one of the biggest things is, like you said, the sedentary population is that hamstring tightness, because
Yes.
it's counteractive, like the way it looks, but when you're sitting and you're walking, the hamstrings technically in flexion, right? Is it flexion?
When you're walking, you're getting hip extension through walking.
Yeah. So it's almost like if you're sitting all the time, that means that you're in flexion the whole time.
Yes,
The hamstrings,
exactly.
it's the opposite of what you would think. Like if you're sitting, your quads are not in flexion, right? So that posterior chain gets tight because it's in flexion if you're sitting most of the time, right?
Yes, and compounded. What compounds that is your hip flexors.
Yes.
Stay in that shortened state for a prolonged period of time from sitting, right? Which also contributes to that low back pain that a lot of your clients and a lot of my clients experience.
Yeah, 100%. So like my biggest advice to anybody who has low back pain is always stretch your hamstrings first and do a bunch of glute raises, and you'll see a huge change, as well as how important it was something that you introduced to me, and I've kind of gravitated and used it fully now. The shoulder band work, just using simple shoulder band work to improve that posture, and it also alleviated a lot of my shoulder and lower back tension injuries that accumulated from jiu-jitsu. Now, I know you do it with me all the time. I use it all the time with my clients. How important, like, is that something that's a staple when you work with people?
That's a staple with, I'm going to confidently say 100% of our clients, we do band work and postural work. So, one of the issues that sitting and being sedentary causes is this anterior rotation of the shoulders, right? You see people, your typical person on their phone scrolling through whatever they're scrolling through.
I think there's a diagnosis, flamingo neck, they call it.
Yeah, that's right. Coach G has coined the term flamingo neck, right? And it's so appropriate because you can picture it, that person hunched over, head down, scrolling through their phone at whatever they're watching, and staying in that position for an extended period of time, that can lead to dysfunction down the road, especially if it's not addressed with these postural exercises, these band pull aparts, these rope pulls to the face, these types of things.
And one of the things that, for anyone listening, that you can do instead of like making it part of your workout, what we've done for like the last 10 years is made it part of warm up. So you're not doing 4, 5, 6 sets and sitting there doing all this band work. You warm up with it. So if you're warming up with it every day, you're getting 2 or 3 sets. By the end of the week, you got 10 plus sets in without even trying, right? And without fatiguing your shoulders too much to actually impact your strength training routine, right?
Exactly.
So that's something people can use through their warm-ups or even cool downs, but I would anticipate warm-up being better. I know a lot of fighter athletes use this band work before, because what it actually helps do is keep your hands up, right? There's the old school method of punching with dumbbells and stuff like that, but what I've found personally, and some of the other people I work with, it over fatigues the muscle if you're going into dynamic training like sparring or pad work and something like that. So I find the band work gives enough stimulation where you get the blood flow and the activation, but not fatiguing it so that you go into pad work or you go into sparring or classes and all your shoulders start dropping because you're over fatigued from those old school methods, right? Not to put them down. There's methods there's value to those too as well, right?
Right. No, I like that approach. For the fighters, I would even, I'd advocate prior to the workout, as you said, part of the warm up. I think that's the most important time, and as part of a reset after the workout, especially if you've done a lot of bag work, a lot of boxing,
jiu-jitsu, especially because of the wrenching on the joints, right?
Yes. So that before and after, I think, would be a smart approach.
So you've worked with so many different athletes and clients over the years, from regular folk looking to just get in shape, lose body fat, etc., and then from athletes, from people like me who compete at the professional level, hockey players at the professional level. You have and one of your biggest clientele is fitness competitions. So athletes who do fitness competitions. Like, what is it like working with such a vast array of athletes in terms of a coach? How difficult is it to keep up with the training and stuff like that? And in your opinion, straight up, what is the what are the most challenging sports? After you get to work with so many people, you get to see the training goes behind it. So what is the most challenging sport that you see walk through your door in terms of difficulty?
Yeah. So answer the first question as far as what's it like coaching these different athletes? It's amazing. It's like a dream come true. When both of us you still are a professional athlete. I was an amateur athlete. We've been athletes for the majority of our lives.
Yeah.
And to be able to extend that through coaching is a blessing and a privilege. And to be able to work with different types of athletes keeps your mind sharp, keeps the whole craft of coaching exciting. Every day you're looking forward to working with different types of people. And, it also keeps you sharp because you've got to constantly be learning and constantly be staying up to date with changes in training, changes in nutrition, changes in supplementation, however the sport is evolving, you've got to,
how do you approach that? Do you, there's online education and stuff like that, but how do you approach getting that education? Is it more like consulting with other coaches in the field, or is it more like going out there and finding out for yourself?
It's really a combination. So it's, I'll do formal certifications and I'll continue doing those. I'm doing one right now through Cornell University on nutrition. And I do it not just, because I've done a bunch of nutrition certifications in the past, but I do it just to stay sharp and to always be in that beginner mindset, that white belt mindset, as you've said, right? And so I do that. Also, I really enjoy it. I just love, I get geeked out learning about new training techniques or new nutrition, new advances in nutrition.
Yeah.
And so, certifications are a part of it. Consulting with other coaches is huge. And I'm extremely blessed that my business partner, Coach G, is a wealth of knowledge. And so I'll talk to him. I'll talk to Coach Oscar. I'll talk to yourself. I'll talk to other peers and just talk shop because, number one, it's fun.
Yeah.
And I'll always pick up something, right?
100%.
And so, especially when I'm talking to people who are as excited about the craft of coaching as I am, and it's fun to bounce ideas off those folks. And then wherever I can learn through YouTube, which is a huge resource. I think it's the most valuable social platform out there, right?
You told me that a while ago.
You can learn anything from there.
Yeah.
You have to filter and you have to find out what's good and what's not good, but there's a lot of really, really valuable information on YouTube. So I use that as a resource. Podcasting is huge for me because I commute to and from work. And so I'll throw on various podcasts to stay up to date with.
Oh, well, that's where I learned a lot of stuff from podcasting, because the same thing as you said, that time in your day, you're like, okay, well, I can't sit down and read. I can't sit down and do this because you're busy, podcasting and just listening to other people talk about these things while
Definitely.
you're on your way to other things helps with the learning curve.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's, to answer question 2, the most challenging sports without question are your sport, mixed martial arts, and CrossFit. And I say both of those sports because they are multidisciplinary sports. You have to be good at so many different qualities. And the polar opposite to that is the sport that I competed in most recently, powerlifting, where it's this single mode where, expressing maximum strength.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you need some mobility. Yes. But you don't need all the other qualities that a UFC fighter or a high level CrossFitter needs. Yeah. And you need strength, you need speed, you need cardiovascular conditioning, anaerobic conditioning, you need very high levels of mobility. You need there's lots of skills that you have to practice to be good at your craft. So there's just so many things to be good at. And CrossFit is very similar in that regard, because there's so many skills that you have to be proficient at.
And I'll be the first to admit, I had a very negative view on it before CrossFit. Not because I didn't respect the athletes, because I was like, the whole thing, oh, it's competitive exercise.
Yeah.
Right. But one of the things, I still enjoy the memes and it's funny, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But one of the things that I've kind of developed over, and this is just maturity as a coach too, and as a person and an athlete, is that when you go through some of those workouts that you would put me through, or I would do on my own, where you're almost like doing this CrossFit thing. You're almost like going through this circuit that they would similarly go through at one of the trials or the regional competitions. And then when I sit back and I'm like, fuck, that was a hard workout. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wait a minute. Those guys are doing it with 10 times as much weight, at 10 times as much more intensity, with way more events and lifts in there. Right. So I started to gain respect from it when, we get into those deep fight camps, those last 3-4 weeks, and I would do a workout and a hard circuit. And then I was like, wait a minute, there are athletes that do this for a living.
Yeah.
Way worse. I'm like, okay, screw that. So if I know that there's that stigma around CrossFit out there, and I'll be the first to admit I was on the bandwagon of like, yeah, screw that. And and I've shifted my mindset in terms of my respect for those athletes too, because especially the amount of repetitions they do, it's very taxing on the joints, and it's probably why it's easy for other sports and other athletes and other coaches to say, oh yeah, if you do CrossFit, you're going to get lots of overuse injuries. But then I sit back and I'm like, well, how is jiu-jitsu any different?
Right. And many sports in that regard, right? Yeah. Like even golfing. Another single mode. Yes, exactly. That's a great example, right? Golf, for example. How many back injuries have resulted in
I've like a lot of
golf swings?
A lot of clients who do golfing, and they always come with side pain, hip pain, and elbows. Right. It's from the repetitive motion, right?
Exactly.
So it's fun to make fun of, like, oh yeah, if you do CrossFit, get ready for the chiropractors and the physiotherapist. But and then when you sit back and you actually critically think about it, well, doing jiu-jitsu is the same shit. You're just destroying your spine in a different way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And so I can be very critical of a lot of aspects of CrossFit, and we've had great conversations, because they have done so many things really, really well and made huge contributions to fitness in general. Yeah. But there are some things that need to be improved, like some of the coaching practices, some of the ways of teaching, the idea that everybody should be able to do certain movements when some people just have no business doing that, right?
Well, it's funny you should say that. I'm not gonna say them by name, but I have family members, right? And I'm genetically brown. Okay, it's quite evident. right? Brown people don't have the best fitness genetics. I hate to admit, like, this is something we have to admit, guys. We are designed for not athletic things. So I have these people in my family who, they gravitated towards CrossFit because maybe they live in a smaller town and that's what they had available. And they gained the community and they're exercising. That's great.
Right.
But my issue with it is when I look at this person, you are not prepared for cleans. You shouldn't be doing cleans yet. But it's because it's part of like that the programming that goes on.
Yes.
And then I can see it having future implications. But at the same time, I have a hard time being too mad at it because it's better than them doing nothing, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the dilemma, right? It's like, okay, this person's doing cleans. They're gonna, in time, they're gonna jack up their wrists, their shoulders. They could injure their back, which are major issues.
Yeah.
And at the same time, there's this amazing camaraderie and community that exists in so many CrossFit gyms, which provides accountability for that person. That person's going to stick with their program. They're very likely going to, if weight loss is the goal, they're going to lose some weight. They're going to feel better. So there's so many positives, right? So it's just a matter of improving some of the coaching practices and some of the the cookie cutter approaches that some CrossFit coaches take.
Yes, 100%. Well, I wanted to circle back to when you were talking about just re-educationing yourself and getting more education and consulting.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to add to that, and if I wanted to see if you agree, is by increasing your education and consulting with other coaches, it also not only increases your knowledge, but as an entrepreneur and as a business person, it adds another tool to your business that you can give to your clients and attract more business. Am I not correct?
Big time. Yeah. One of I've got three mentors. Two have passed away, and one is still kicking. And they're all named Charles. So we have Charles Poliquin, who passed away a few years ago, one of the most famous strength and conditioning coaches. We have Charlie Francis, who also passed away, unfortunately, to cancer, who was a legendary track and field coach. And still alive and doing well, we have Charles Glass, who is a premier bodybuilding coach based out of California. Charles Poliquin in particular, and Charles Glass in a separate conversation, basically they said, to earn more, you need to learn more.
Yes. Right?
And so that's a truth that I've experienced and you've experienced, and many coaches have also experienced, that if you dedicate yourself to your craft and you're continually learning and improving upon your base of knowledge, that's going to make you a more valuable coach, and that will lead to greater business, more business.
Do you think that that's what hurts some other, I would call them trainers, because I don't think you don't become a coach until, like I did this with the podcast with Corey Fernandez. I don't know if you heard it, but he said something really good is like, a trainer trains you in fitness, but a coach transforms your life, right?
Right.
Do you think that trainers, people who are getting started in the business or during this pandemic time especially, have kind of let a valuable opportunity kind of slide by where they didn't use time that was a gift? Because like when the world reopens and you're back in there working with clients, time is limited, right?
Yeah.
And you're not going to be able to sit down and learn so much when you're pulling 8-hour days, and you know this business, sometimes you're pulling more than 8-hour days just to get everybody in.
Right.
How important is it for someone who's a beginner to kind of adopt that mentality?
Oh, it's crucial. It's probably the most important thing you can do at that early stage of your career.
Yeah. The
money is not as important when you're just starting out as the learning and the learning opportunities.
Yeah.
Right. The money will come in time, but it will only come if you dedicate yourself to your craft and you learn as much as possible, and you're like a sponge, sourcing knowledge from fellow coaches, from formal schooling, from certifications, from social media, from wherever you can source that knowledge from. You need to absorb as much as you can. You need to be obsessed about learning, and then that will ultimately transfer.
Do you think like when someone's in a big club, like working for a big club, that kind of gets thrown out the window because of the nature of business in a big club setting?
It can, and so when someone, a young coach, a beginning coach, approaches me and asks me for advice as far as how they get into the game, I would never discourage them from going to the big box gyms, because you can get your reps in more easily than if you just said, okay, I'm going to pull some money together and open up my own place and wait for people to come in, right? At least when you're at a LA so-and-so or a Good Life, right? You have very often clients coming to you, right? And so they feed you clients. And so that's a valuable opportunity to get your reps in and to to hone your craft on the gym floor.
Yeah.
However, you should also be using that opportunity to learn and to acquire as much knowledge as possible. And very often those big box clubs will support your education through, organizations like CanFit Pro or others, or subsidize your education. So take advantage of all of that. And then when you're ready to make a move to go on your own,
make the move.
You're in a better position to do that, right?
Exactly. Now, the other, like, we've done so much strength training throughout the years, different methods. Obviously, there's tons. We have different styles in terms of, you have, HIIT, overload, using negative sets. What is your absolute favorite method in terms of styles of strength training for transforming athletes and transforming people's bodies, like the general population and athletes? Like, what is the go-to that will apply for everything that you like to use for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. My favorite strength training method, I would say, is the every minute on the minute, or EMOM method.
I hate that one.
And that has broad application to general population as well as the athletic population. And depending on how you choose the reps and how you sequence the exercises, you can build strength, you can build muscle, you can build anaerobic capacity. So it's a very versatile method.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoy that.
Like when
it's also
sorry, continue.
It's also beneficial for your more analytical lifters who tend to get into their head, where when you're doing an EMOM method, for those who don't know, you're doing an exercise for, let's say it's 5 reps. That 5 reps could take 15 to 20 seconds. Then for the duration of that minute, call it 40 to 45 seconds, you're resting, and then you're going again. And you're going to do that for 10, 12, maybe even 15 sets with that exercise. And there's no time to really get into your head and think about the next thing. You have to just complete the set, rack the bar, catch your breath, and it's time to go again.
Yes.
And so you get really good at executing and turning off the mind and just focusing on being very, very present with the exercise and being really connected. And so I like it for those reasons as well.
For that method, is it important to use a lower rep count, or does it?
Yeah, you can. Now, if you're training to improve anaerobic capacity, or even conditioning, and it's like more of a metabolic approach, then the reps would skew a little higher. And so it might take closer to 30, maybe even 40 seconds to complete a set. with 20 to 30 seconds rest.
So like
and that's
incomplete rest. So like
incomplete rest. Yeah. So I would use that for someone like yourself who, the metabolic demands are so extremely high that you need that level of conditioning in the cage.
And for those who are not very familiar with using this method, or like I know you use intervals, so like sometimes people use 20 seconds on, 20 seconds off, like your work to rest ratio is even. So what I tend to encourage with I love this method. I hate this method and I love this method. I love this method to use. I hate the method to do.
Right.
But when I start out, like when my fitness or base level is low, like when we start camp, like a few months ago we did that step up test, and to me it felt like shit. Right, when you start out, I always like to start with a lower work and then a higher rest, and then as I progress through the weeks and the months, I get to the incomplete rest point where I'm working for 40 seconds and then resting for 20 and then working for 40 seconds. So it's almost very similar to using intervals, but you use it in the 60 seconds set.
Yes. You're absolutely right. It is a form of interval training, but where we're just the minute is the unit of time.
Yeah,
exactly.
And so
right. Everything is based on that minute.
Now, do you find like speaking of just intervals, do you find like if someone's doing something for more than a minute, is it useful? Because I find that it's very inapplicable at that point, even for explosive sports. Like if I was doing, so let's pick the simple airdyne bike, and I was pedaling as hard as I can, or if I was pedaling for over a minute, either I'm a super fucking athlete and I'm on some steroids, or I'm not working hard enough in that time. Like, do you find like if you cross over that minute where you're trying to work an athlete over that minute, there's some diminishing returns at that point? Or
well, the short answer is it depends. Someone, a high level athlete like yourself, I could extend to that length of time. I wouldn't necessarily do that often, but I could go that far. But for the majority of people, I might keep my interval length to 15 to 30 seconds, and then we may be looking at equal or more rest. Like maybe it's a 2-to-1 rest to work ratio, or it's a 1-to-1 rest to work ratio.
And also when we're talking about this method of training, if you look at some of the other, I would say big box gyms, like I always pick on them because it's right outside my door. There's one right downstairs from me.
Right.
Orange Theory. When they always advertise high intensity interval training and methods like you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you go and you watch them work out, they're not actually doing it. You understand what I'm saying? It's more of a media marketing tool to attract people in than to actually doing it. Because like I look at some of those gyms and they're advertising we're doing HIIT training. Well,
it's a buzzword now.
If you're doing HIIT training for more than, in my opinion, 15 minutes, you're not really doing HIIT training.
No.
Right? Because the whole point of it, of the every minute on the minute and those intervals, is to really tax your body in a short amount of time. But if you're now working out for 45 minutes doing HIIT, you're not really doing high intensity because your heart rate has to level off at some point. And if it's staying like in the 130, 140 zone because you're extending it for this long period of time, it's not high intensity, right?
Right. Yeah, you're right. It's a term. It's a marketing term. It's a buzzword, HIIT, and a lot of businesses are built around that. That term, and they use stations, they use intervals, and yes, that approach has some value, but it's not true high intensity interval training. High intensity interval training usually involves a 5-to-1 rest to work ratio. Yes. So you would do something for 20 seconds and you would take 100 seconds to recover.
Yeah.
So it would be like a 2-minute bout of work and rest, right? 20 seconds on, 100 seconds off. In that 20 seconds, whether it's an airdyne bike or a sprint you're really going at 100% of your capacity or attempting to do that. Now, you need that amount of rest to be able to produce the same quality a second, third, fourth, and possibly fifth time.
Yeah.
You can't do that for half an hour.
No.
You can't do that for an hour. It's impossible, right? So what those companies are doing is it's a form of interval training, but it's not by definition high intensity.
And I think it's important for people to know that, because I'm not discouraging people from doing those gyms or going there, but don't for 1 second thinking you're getting one thing and you're getting another, right? I think it's important is for the education aspect to know exactly what you're getting, because it's important, especially for, like you said, the psyche, right? If you think you're getting one thing and then the other, and then maybe you decide to go with your friend to a gym that actually does do it, and then you're like, oh shit. You know,
yes.
And then not only does it discredit the gym that you were at before, but it puts a black cloud over the industry. Like, hey, they've been lying to me. I thought I was getting one form of exercise, but I wasn't really getting it. And then it gives a bad perception to those of us who do work here, right?
Yeah.
Moving on, when I started training with you, one of the things that you brought to my attention was, we spend an hour in the gym together, right? It's a minimal amount of time per week, an hour, maybe 2 hours if we're doing 2 sessions or whatever. But a lot of the work is done outside of the gym, meaning that you've always been a proponent of a full health approach. So like when you're training, you train for an hour, but you have to eat right. You have to sleep right. You have to reduce your stress. You have to do things, get hobbies that make you reduce, like this whole body system approach. Like, is that something that you started out with and just kind of always had, or is it something that you kind of developed over time because you noticed that was really what made the improvements?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that is something I developed over time. I didn't have that right away. What I did have was a love for sport, a love for athletics, and that was followed by a love for strength training, because I saw how strength training would improve my ability as an athlete. And then I started to embrace the nutrition next when I saw how nutrition would impact my body composition.
Yeah.
I could get bigger or leaner through manipulating my food, manipulating my nutrition. And once I discovered that, then that opened up a whole new world, and I started to learn much more about that. And then over time, I learned how recovery, sleep, number one, and other recovery modalities such as massage, foam rolling, contrast showers, heat, sauna, these types of things could contribute to better performance. And so then I started to add those ideas into the toolkit. And then lastly, and more recently, I learned how various stressors can impact performance, whether they be physical stressors or psychological stressors, and how managing those things can ultimately produce better performance and lead to creating a better athlete.
Well, one of the things I took from you, I use it with my clients, is I never used to do it before, but I noticed like every time I came into the gym, the first thing you'd always, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? And I started doing it too because it helped me play off of somebody's emotions. Like, for example, Mike Dolce said this too in one of his podcasts, where like an athlete or somebody comes to you, but they might have just been in traffic for an hour. Or it might have had a stressful work day, right? So to compound their training, like say you as a coach had a plan to run them into the ground that day, because that was the day that you guys do the high intensity, and the other days where you do the so I find like the more important part is like somebody comes to you with that stressor on you as a coach and as a trainer, it's almost you're doing a negative to that person by putting them through an incredibly stressful workout.
Yes. Yes. And that's also it depends situation. So I'll use you as a as a great example, high level athlete who needs to be good at multiple skills, multiple disciplines.
Yeah.
And then I'll use a Bay Street executive who, type A personality, wants to get better. Maybe the goals are body composition and general health. Okay. So both of those people live at Yonge and Eglinton, where you live.
Yeah.
And they're coming to see me in the afternoon, navigating rush hour. You've got a fight coming up in 8 weeks.
Yes.
You get to me and you say, I don't feel that great. And I say, okay, are you injured?
No.
And so, no, you're not injured. Are you ill, like food poisoning or the flu or something like that?
Yes.
No, you don't have that. Okay. You're a little tired. Well, we're still going to do the workout because the stakes are much higher for you than they are for that Bay Street executive. So we still got to push forward, right? Now, if you said my knee was bothering me or something's going on with my shoulder, well, 100% we've got to make adjustments, right?
Yes.
Now, in contrast, the Bay Street executive comes to see me. He's tired or she's tired. I may make different adjustments there because they don't need necessarily that additional stressor. They don't have a fight coming up in 8 weeks. They're training for life. They're training for health. So I may reduce the volume. I may change exercises. I may go in a different direction with that person.
Now, also to build on that too is like I remember those happen a lot, especially for athletes, right? And Coach G has always said this to me is like athletes aren't always going to be motivated. If you relied 100% on motivation, then this would be easy. So there's a lot of days where I come in and I'm not motivated, right? And I'm just like, oh, I'm tired, right? But those are the kind of days, especially if you're competing. It doesn't matter what sport you are. If it's from something as easy as curling to something as crazy as CrossFit or MMA, you're gonna need those push because when you get into the competition, who cares what you feel like that day? You got to show up and perform, right? Whereas the average person, they are not having to have that mental edge, right? You don't show up to the office and be like, I'm going to push through. No, they don't have to do that. So there's a big difference because I find like when you push those people past that point, sometimes it leads to the injuries.
Exactly.
To them not wanting to come back. It makes them think you're a dick sometimes and insensitive to how they're actually feeling. So I think it's very important for in my opinion for coaches and trainers and to take that into account when you're working with somebody.
I completely agree.
Because if you don't, it makes as a business person because if you're in fitness, I don't care if you work for a gym, you're a business person, right? You know what I mean? So you have to take that into account with your clients.
Completely agree, brother. All good. I just had to. All good. I had to just make a little adjustment there.
Yeah, no worries. So the other, so one of the things that you're really good at, and I mean, as your student, I'm very proud of you for it. Is you achieved that Canadian Powerlifting Championship. Like for me as an athlete and as a coach, I like when I'm working with somebody or I'm friends with people in the industry. I love to see them. I wouldn't say compete, but I love to see them pushing to achieve higher standards. Because if we're going to be here preaching to people, hey, push past your limits because your body is capable of things that you never imagined. So you have achieved that level of success in terms of powerlifting. How important to you is it for you to be in good shape and to, compete in certain things and actively pursue a higher level of fitness yourself? Because what I've seen in this industry is oftentimes, especially if the person is operating independently and they're in their own business, as success increases, their own personal fitness and own personal goals get left behind. And then all of a sudden you're walking into a place where the coach himself doesn't look like he's taking care of himself.
Right.
So how important it for you is it for yourself and for other coaches to almost practice what you preach?
I think is vitally important. When you're on an airplane and I don't know if I would actually do this in this situation, but the example is worth stating. And the flight attendant says, in the event of an emergency,
yeah,
you put on your own oxygen mask before you put on the oxygen mask of anybody else.
yes,
Right? Basically saying you take care of yourself so that you have the ability to take care of other people.
Yeah.
Now, in that airplane situation, I know that I put my daughter's mask on first and my son's mask on first before I did mine, but that's a separate issue.
Yes.
Right? The idea of taking care of yourself first so you can have the ability to take care of other people, I think is the takeaway point. And so not everyone has to compete. It's fun to compete. You and I both love competition,
Yeah.
For our own personal growth and to see what we can do. But it's important to stay sharp. It's important to set high standards for yourself so that you're literally walking the talk.
Yes.
And so when someone that you're advising or coaching or mentoring comes to you or you're giving advice, that advice is coming from a place of authenticity because they know that, Coach Ashton or Coach PK, they're dedicated to their craft of coaching, and they also look after themselves. They're in the gym training. They're watching what they eat. They're taking care of all aspects of their health. And so I'm more inclined to listen to what they have to say and to trust what they have to say.
100%. Now, I think it's the West Side Barbell guys. They were I think they said this, and it was in a counteraction to how you can read a book on how to squat.
Yeah.
But everything you learn underneath the bar. I think that's what one
Absolutely.
of the things they said. And I'm 100% on that wagon because I've witnessed it, and I'm sure you've witnessed it too. There's a lot of people in the industry who, they can tell you how to deadlift.
Right.
They couldn't do it themselves. Right. And like you said, that affects your authenticity. It affects your relationship with your clients. Because one of the bigger things, and it's why I kind of gravitated away from football. I love the sport. NFL Sundays, you know me, Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah,
I talk shit to every team on the planet.
Yeah.
I love football. But one of the things that kind of pulled me away from the sport was that I would have these coaches, these positional coaches, telling me these things to do, and I would look at them and I'd be like, "Your fat ass couldn't do that, right?" So why should I listen to you about these things when I know that you can physically do it yourself? How can the validity of the information be true, right? And then I started training martial arts, and there's obviously some outliers who don't do it, but for the most part, everyone who's instructing you has to have those physical capabilities.
Yes.
If they don't, it's very apparent really quickly. Like you can't flake a black belt.
You cannot. No.
Right?
No. You get called out or exposed real fast in
really fast.
in martial arts. Yeah.
Really fast. Like it's quite apparent when someone tells me I can tell a belt ranking when I roll with someone. Yeah. Just even with my eyes closed, I can be like, yes, this person's a purple belt. Well, this guy might be a black belt. This white belt, 100%. Like the one thing that I gravitate towards is people who can do things, and I think other people gravitate towards them too. And especially in this industry too, where you might be on your feet for 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day. You have to have a level of physical fitness, or you won't be able to do it again the next day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because in those 8 hours, you're not just sitting like this.
No, you're picking up weights, you're racking weights, you're changing equipment, you're moving, you're very active during that.
Your energy has to be high too, because no one wants to come to their guy who's been working for 8 hours looking like
exactly.
So it's very important. So all the coaches out there who are not taking care of themselves, take goddamn care of yourself. It's damn important.
Yeah, definitely. And you'll for just to build on that, psychological reasons, mental reasons, right? So you take care of your body, and you're also indirectly taking care of your mind.
Yes.
And so your mental outlook toward your craft, your mental outlook toward life, your sense of well-being, all of that improves when you take care of yourself physically.
Yeah, and to like top off that point, one of the things that really stands out, at least with me, is like for years I've been working with certain people, and like we're only doing strength training, and then
Yeah.
um, to make things more interesting, we start doing pads or doing different variations of exercise, and then they're like, well, how the hell do you know how to do all this actually? And I'm like, well, one, I'm a professional fighter, so
Yeah.
but two, and it helps. They now all of a sudden they're like they come to this one person who has all these different skill sets, and
Right.
when fit, like I'll admit it, fitness can get boring at sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The standard lifts can get repetitive, boring. I don't want to do it. But for a coach to have these different skill sets and to be able to practice what they preach, like for example, I could never be interested in picking up 500 pounds like you do.
Right.
I mean, I look at the
Right.
bar, I'm just like, fuck that. No, I
Right.
don't want
And nor do you need to do that to be great at your sport.
Yeah,
Right.
but my point being is when I see you do it, I'm like, shit, I want to go deadlift now. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's picking up 500. I gotta at least do 2 or 3. It motivates the client, and motivates the coach too to continue to inspire people, right, through
Right.
fitness, because that's what we're here to do, right?
Absolutely. And then the words can go only so far. They yes, they have value, but your actions and how you conduct yourself, that's huge. And sometimes that speaks even greater volumes, right?
Absolutely. Now with I don't know if it's in the rear view. It depends on where you live. But with the pandemic in the rear view, or at least the end in sight, I know me and you have talked about this before, because there's a constant narrative that goes around that fitness is in trouble. Like fitness industry will never rebound, and I don't believe it. You don't believe it, but
Right.
it's being crushed and sort of disrespected by governments around the world, not just here in Canada. Like there's no attention here. Like anytime you get attention on fitness, it's pretty much a negative review. Like people don't
Right.
want to go back, and I don't see that. I see, like you see, a demand. But where do we go from here? Like if we're a gym business, if we're a fitness professional, yoga instructor, what do we have to look forward to in the next 3 to 5 years in terms of our industry?
Fantastic question. I think it's important for people to recognize that there will always be a need for people to take care of themselves physically and mentally. And saying that means there's an opportunity, and probably more opportunity than ever, for coaches to help people achieve that, to help people improve their physical well-being and their mental well-being. Now, are gyms dead? Are gyms going to cease to exist? I don't believe that for a second.
No.
I believe that gyms may take different forms. I think gyms will have to evolve, but I think people are starving for connection.
Yeah.
And we saw that during the pandemic, and we're seeing it as the pandemic, comes to a close, or at least, yes, let's call it that. We're seeing people are going out to restaurants. They're going to get they're going to personal care services, and they're going to see their coach or their trainer to experience a in-person workout.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's going to be more important than ever, because people want that human connection, especially in person. And they also want a virtual experience if and when another situation like this presents itself.
Yeah.
Or it might not even be the pandemic. It just might be another option for people. And so I think it's important for coaches to embrace the in-person experience, and to get proficient at delivering value through online tools, whether it's Zoom, whether it's straight online programming. Being good at that, I think, is going to be good for all coaches.
And you're absolutely right. I think the one biggest takeaway, I think, that in the next 10 years we'll be probably happy about as fitness professionals, is that the pandemic opened up a wide stream for everybody.
Yeah.
So like if like a lot of people before that were like really one dimensional, where they just taught class, whatever class they taught, or they, worked with clients in person. Whereas now it actually will give you access to help more people.
Exactly.
Other services. The only problem is don't be late to the party. Like the shift has happened already.
That's right.
Like you said, there's I personally, I'm not going to get into depth of it, benefited greatly from the pandemic. Not because of any crazy stuff, but mainly because I refused to stop, and I kept going, and I pivoted everything, and I used those different tools and streams to help people and to bring people in, and it allowed me to reach a further mass than, because there's only so many hours in a day that you can see people and work or teach classes, right?
That's right.
But now with all these other things that opened up in the pandemic in terms of online services, apps, different kind of things, you can reach a lot more people and give them the same amount of service as before. And not only that, but increase your revenue as well.
So. Couldn't agree more, brother. And I think one of the most important takeaways that you just said is you refused to stop. A lot of people just ended up quitting, and it's understandable. This was an unprecedented time in our lives, and a lot of people were affected mentally in a terrible way, and so that's unfortunate. But trying to not quitting, that's number one, and adopting a mindset, a growth mindset, that there are possibilities even in the face of adversity and things going wrong. There are possibilities, and so you take that you take that mindset, you take that approach, you'll find creative ways to solve problems and to thrive in this new world.
And like, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I just want to use it as an example. Is during the pandemic, I ended up going for a run and tearing my Achilles. And it was a complete accident. And then I had the surgery and I had it repaired. And I was very lucky to get that taken care of really quickly.
Right.
Why I'm saying this story is because you have a pandemic where people are already staying at home and afraid to do these things. And then to add in conjunction, I'm now in a cast.
Yes.
Immobile. And
yes, with two small kids running around.
I had the surgery on a Thursday, and I kid everybody not, I was back at clients' houses, butt scooting downstairs to get to their gyms in their house and going to see them on the Monday, right after. And I was taking Uber because I couldn't drive, so that cut my margins almost completely. Yep. But the point being is I refused to stop.
And you maintain those relationships as well.
That was where I was getting to. Is one of the biggest things in a time like this is you lose touch with people. Right. And in this industry, when you lose touch with people, forget about the money and the business side. Not everybody is motivated like me and you to show up to the gym. They need the constant, like the push. Oh, I'm going to go to the gym because I have an appointment with Ashton today. I'm going to go to the gym because I'm going to see PK today. I'm going to go to the gym because there's a class today. But when you lose touch with people, even if it's for 2 weeks, that could lead to losing touch with people for 6-8 months before things get out of control and they're like, I need to go back to the gym. Right? So I think it's important for everybody to know, like, even now that we're coming out of this, you can't stop. This is a great time, especially if you're coming up, and even if you're a veteran of the business like yourself, to do even more, right?
Exactly. I couldn't agree more.
That's the best way to end this crap. Just just like that. But
just don't stop, right?
Don't stop. So thank you, Coach, for coming on. I appreciate everything, and you're such a wealth of knowledge. We'll definitely do this again.
My pleasure, brother.
With some more stuff to talk about, because for those who don't know, Coach PK is, like I would always talk about OGs in martial art. PK is an OG in terms of the fitness industry. And so can you let people know where to find you if they want to come and train with you and to work with you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So number one, thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Anytime, Coach.
This is a fun conversation as always. And I look forward to joining again at a later date whenever you need me.
Yeah.
People can find Strong Athlete, myself and Coach G at strongathlete.com. That's www.strong-athlete.com. They can find us online on Instagram at Strong Athlete and at Team Strong Athlete. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, and I think everything's at Strong Athlete. Yes, so some of my younger athletes are saying, "Yeah, I need to get on TikTok."
Yeah, they tell me that too. So Becky got on TikTok, and like it's almost like she's addicted to it now. Like it's a very addictive platform,
right?
And I don't understand it yet, so I need to do it too. Like some people tell me get on TikTok. I'm like,
yeah,
I'm already on 3 things. I don't need more.
Exactly.
But yeah, so get in touch with PK, especially if you're in the Mississauga area. That's where you guys are. But
yes,
I mean, I've followed the guy. He's been everywhere. I've followed him. So he's amazing coach, amazing person. Definitely go train with him. And also, don't forget to subscribe. That thingy on the bottom there. Click on it.
Yes.
Don't be a punk. Don't listen and not subscribe. That's how we get stuff going here. So thank you, PK. Thank you so much again. And that's it for Grind My Gears, everybody. See you next time.
Thank you, sir.